Well, as Bob has explained, I'm here representing Women for Independence. And some people might not think a Women for Independence was necessary, but when me and a few of my friends and colleagues were sitting almost night after night watching the independence debate unfold on the political programmes, whether it was Newsnight or Scotland Tonight or the news itself, we were absolutely sick, fed up of the whole debate being presented through the eyes of men in grey suits. No disrespect to him, he's got a grey suit on the night. But it makes this very serious point, because women are 52% of the population, and if there's going to be a yes vote and we are actually going to achieve independence, then we need to persuade the women, and we need to listen to the women first and foremost. And we thought it was necessary to shift the focus away from debating some of the issues in Punch and Judy fashion about the currency or the monarchy or whatever, to talk about what real women, real people in the streets actually were concerned about. And that's mostly what I'm going to talk about tonight. Women for Independence doesn't have a manifesto, it doesn't have policies. We're first and foremost about listening to women and providing a space for women to discuss independence and make sure we will damn well bloody be heard in the independence debate. So, but you might be forgiven for being mistaken that Women for Independence has quite a radical view of independence, but we're a very pluralistic, autonomous organisation, so you might be forgiven for thinking that some of the things I might say mean that Women for Independence has a radical view of independence. We don't, and we're very deliberately so, very, very inclusive. So if it was another speaker for Women for Independence, they might not say exactly what I'm going to say, but this is what I'm going to say. This is quite high now, I'm having to tiptoe. I did a meeting last week in Motherwell, and it was quite interesting because some wag in the audience, I had explained that I was a wee bit late because I mistakenly relied on the specific guidance of my sat-nav to get there. And so I ended up in a rainforest adventureland. And then I was late for the Motherwell and Wishaw meeting. So I had explained that, and then the wag in the audience, because somebody else was late because of their sat-nav as well, said, if we have to rely on people like you and your sat-navs, then how will we know what independence will look like? We need some answers, we need a definite destination. And I thought that was quite interesting, and because my support for independence isn't based in having an exact idea of what independence will look like. And my view of independence, which is a simple view that a nation and its people have the right to determine their own future and not to get the governments and policies and values and the assets stripped that a government in London invariably does. I think it's a basic democratic right. But we have to have a wee think about what some of the opinion polls are saying. And the latest one saying that if people thought that next year it would be £500 a year better off, they'll vote yes for independence. Now that's not my view, but it clearly is a view that's out there. And is that the view of people that are already well off? I don't think so. I'd be interested in the social class, the gender makeup of the people that are saying if you can see I'll be better off. Because I think the people who are saying that probably are sick of politicians just fighting it amongst each other. Probably are sick of the big debates about the constitution, the monarchy, things like that. They don't really make a difference in their day-to-day lives. It is about the things that Kat was talking about the terrible attacks on our basic dignity and humanity being perpetuated by the government in Westminster. You know, in my work and in my family life, I've encountered so many barriers, and you're thinking, how bad does it have to get? Because over the last, say, year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, collectively as a nation and individually, we have lost a hell of a lot more than £500 a year. We have lost thousands. And the people that are looking to be better off are the people that are really, really struggling and phoning in a crisis. Now, crisis in terms of the welfare state used to mean like a crisis in the one day. You phone for a crisis grant for Glasgow City Council and you can't get through because it's overwhelmed. And they say that if you've already applied for a crisis grant, please allow 15 days for it to be processed. And sorry we can't put you through, but you can look on our website and there's information there about where to go for a food bank. Now this is 2013. What does it take for people to go, no, that is enough? This is evidence of the UK and Westminster failing. How much more evidence do people need that this isn't matching the aspirations of the majority of the people in Scotland? And the only way that we can increase the chances, nothing is guaranteed, the destination is not guaranteed, but you think about it, if you were a bookie, what would you bet on? That Westminster was suddenly going to change? That Ed Miliband would get elected as the Prime Minister? And undo all the badness that's been done by New Labour as well as the Tories and the Lib Dems most recently? What would you get? What odds would you get? And then think about what odds you would get if you thought about the Scottish Parliament having all the power over taxation, over social security, over utilities, over everything. What odds would you get for that, do you think? There are no guarantees. There is no specific destination that I can promise or anybody else can promise. But it is about weighing up the risks and weighing up the opportunities and weighing up the chances and taking a bit of responsibility and thinking about your own life where nothing is ever guaranteed. Maybe you make decisions to buy a new house. Maybe you make a decision to move somewhere or change your job if you've got one. If you've got choices, you take risks. You might take out a bank loan to buy a new car if you can afford it, or a new suite, or something like that. There's no guarantee that you're going to be able to pay for it next year. You can only balance it up and say, what are the chances? I think I will be able to pay for it. So we take risks every day of our lives. But I have to say, when you look at what's happening in England to the NHS, when you look at what's happening with the proposed privatisation of the post office, when you look at what's happening in terms of everything falling apart, when you see it being proposed that people who claim a wee bit more than they might be entitled to in benefits, which are rubbish anyway, are threatened with 10 years in jail, and yet bankers and wealthy get yet ever more bonuses and get rewarded for defrauding the rest of us. What odds would you get that Westminster is going to provide you with the less risky option? The biggest risk for the future, the biggest risk to anybody's pocket, the biggest risk to the future of our children and grandchildren is represented by the UK Westminster government in whatever guise anybody happens to vote for it in. And I don't want to give anybody nightmares. But there is a very, very realistic prospect when you look at the opinion polls in England and when you look at what might happen in a 2015 election. There is a very realistic prospect of a Conservative UKIP coalition. And Boris Johnson is just waiting for a by-election to stand to be an MP and challenge David Cameron for leadership. And can you imagine David Cameron as the Prime Minister and Nigel Farage as the Deputy? If you think things are bad now, I can't even imagine what it would be like then. So you do have an opportunity in the independence referendum not to be a hostage to fortune, depending on how people vote in the rest of the UK about what kind of government that you get. By the way, I absolutely believe Scottish Labour want to abolish the bedroom tax. But it's never been so apparent that London rule is the problem. You've got Jackie Baillie saying they'll abolish it and Ed Miliband saying, oh, I don't know. That's what he's kind of wastes his bedroom. But, you know, clearly, London rule is the problem. London Rule is the problem in terms of the whole parliamentary setup. London Rule is the problem in terms of UK-wide party politics. London Rule is the problem in relation to trade unions as well. In a lot of cases, when I was a trade union activist, I had to get the train down to London to ask for permission to be able to take strike action in a Glasgow hospital. So there's a huge issue about imbalance of power and lack of democracy and lack of control. And, you know, if we've got power over everything in Scotland, it will be our right to make an arse of it. But at least it will get our arse out if we make and not somebody else's. We have never voted for the United Kingdom. The people who have lived in Scotland have never, ever voted for the UK. This is a chance, the one and only chance the people of Scotland have ever had the opportunity to say what they want. And it's not going to be way back to 1707 and saying, oh, we want to right the wrong. But I do think that we need to put some things in a wee bit of historical perspective. The people in 1707 didn't want it. The people were rioting in the streets. And by 1715 there was a rebellion that involved Protestants and Jacobites united, let down by their leaders, and it was unsuccessful. That's a familiar tale. So, in their experience at that time, which we're often told that the UK and the Union was marvellous for everybody, and suddenly it was booming and there was wealth and blah blah blah. It wasn't. It wasn't. The ordinary people experienced crushing poverty immediately after the Union, and they rebelled against it, and they wanted to undo it, but they did not have the democratic right, and a lot of them lost their lives. Now, we might be taking a wee bit of a risk come the referendum in terms of whether we vote yes, or whether we vote no, or whether we don't turn up. A wee bit of risk, but nobody's asking anybody to lay down their life. Nobody's asking anybody to risk life and limb. We have a responsibility to the past generations, but more importantly the future generations, to stand up and be counted and take control. All we have to do is put a cross on the ballot paper. That's all we have to do. And we have that power. And I don't think that people would want to look back in 2014 when we had that chance to do one simple thing and not take it. We must take it. The last thing I'm going to say, because I'm assuming that most people in here are already voting yes. This isn't about speakers up on the platform. It's not about debates in the Newsnight. You know, it's not about the mainstream media. That's not what's going to win the referendum. What's going to win the referendum that is each and one of everybody in here and everybody who is already voting yes. If everybody takes responsibility, it's a simple truth. If each individual person who's already committed to voting yes persuades one more person, it's a landslide. So, we'll go out and do it.